Hi all, so this is just a video specifically about structuring the Heroes essay on WJEC's Unit 2A paper. Now, the reason I'm doing a Heroes one first is because it's a little bit unusual in comparison to what you're used to. So the first exam you may have sat in January would have been your of Mice and Men exam, and in that of Mice and Men exam you would have been expected to do AO1 and AO2 for your extract and AO1 and AO4 for your essay. Things change when it comes to Heroes. You don't have that context to fall back on, which means that you have to take a different approach to analysing. Whereas you would say some points and then analyse them really with AO4 and how they represent the time and so on, you don't have that luxury, which means you need to rely further on your AO2. Now, I created this structure strip specifically for my classes to structure their essays, and this is geared more towards higher tier. However, you can still use these with foundation tier. You will just have probably a more sophisticated essay than you need. Okay, so as I said, quite often they're going to have a character or a theme essay. Now, this is not always the case. And quite often with Heroes and an inspector course, the essays can be very random and they won't necessarily link to a theme that you've been studying in class. Most teachers will teach the same themes every year, and most of the time the theme will come up. But to be honest, it's not uncommon to have a completely random theme thrown in. Okay, so just to go through each of the AOs then. AO1 is going from specific to general, shows extended knowledge of the text. This is where your quotations come in. And it also includes things like tentative judgments, which can include speculation on attitudes and motives of characters. Now, that's taken directly from the mark scheme, okay? But what that means is you're offering your own perspective, potentially, on the attitudes of characters, what they do in the book, how they do it, why they do it, things like justifications. It's all about your understanding of the book and being able to say tentatively, I think that this character would have been, or this character may have been, and using that tentative language. Okay. AO2 is more an analysis of language, structure, and form with a focus on stylistic features and the writer's intention. Now, I added the writer's intentions bit because this can also come under AO1, but analysing and talking about what the writer's intentions were, so Cormier's intentions were, is an excellent way to squeeze in an extra bit of analysis because you're tentatively judging what that author might have intended, which is great. Okay, now AO1, this is the easy bit, okay? So a few things from me, a few bits of advice. You must focus on using as many quotations as possible to give yourself a good amount to work with in AO2. Now, I tend to put a number on there, which is like 8 quotations. Now, these count for single word as well. Single word quotations are the easiest to remember and also can offer the most impact, especially when analysing. You can get away with far less, to be honest. You can get away with, say, 5 quotations in certain essays or 5 quotations per paragraph, as long as your AO2 is really strong, because AO2 is 67% of your exam mark, which means you can get away with having a few less quotes, as long as your essay is well rendered. Okay. When using quotations, embed them to allow for an academic register. So what that means is you put them into the sentence that you were talking about. So you could say, when Larry lures young girls, ... that is you embedding the quotation in a statement, okay? And finally, understand your character by referencing the breadth of the text. There is no use in you taking all of your quotations from the first chapter that character is presented in. The examiner is going to know straight away that you don't know the novel, or they're going to assume, and that's even worse, that you don't know the novel. If that is the case, they will dock you on AO1 marks. And they always say that WJEC are positive markers, and they are. But AO1, they will be heavily critical if you're only using quotes from the first bit of the novel. It just doesn't make sense, okay? And I know at this time of year, teachers are going to be rushing to make sure that the books are both done because it is a bit of a squeeze at this time of year, but it is also your job to go out and learn those quotations from the rest of the book. Don't rest on your laurels and blame everybody else. Take ownership. Okay, so a couple of examples of AO1 being used. Francis begins the novel as a character with no face and ends with the hope that he will visit a doctor to repair his broken image. I've embedded the quotations and I've also discussed character specifically. So I've discussed what the character is like without necessarily using a narrative approach. I've just stated things. Larry's lure of the young girls to the rec centre suggests, again, a good bit of AO1. I've started off with some knowledge and understanding of what the character is doing. And Nicole's white clothing adds to the colour imagery. Now, colour imagery would be more AO2, but I put it in there for posterity's sake, and contrast with her green towards the end of the text. Notice how I am tracking to each end of the text. Okay. Now, AO2 is a little bit harder because I know a lot of people will go, oh my God, I have no idea what I can incorporate to further my analysis if I don't have context to fall back on. And you are right, even the brightest pupils will struggle with this because being able to incorporate AO2 and get it in there is difficult. It is really difficult, especially when you're used to writing about context. So a few things then. AO2 can be initially complex, but learning and recognizing techniques will help you analyze further. So the three areas they recommend in the WJEC mark scheme is form, language, and structure. So I've broken my techniques down into those elements. If you mention things like flashback, the redemption novel, the revenge novel, good defeats evil, those are form. That's the form the book has taken, okay? The form that writers chose to convey those ideas through. Language, things like specific vocabulary, like verbs, adjectives, etc., metaphors, similes, imagery, lexical set, italics, which are Francis' thoughts in the book, pathetic fallacy, religious symbols, foreshadowing. All of these elements link very well to the characters, but also AO2. And then finally, structure, being able to talk about non-linear and flashbacks. Please, for the love of God, mention flashbacks in your hero's essay. Okay, it's a buzzword that the exam board love. Using flashbacks in this kind of way demonstrates something that Cormier was trying to intend. Therefore, it's AO2. You're talking about how the book is structured. And in this case, it is structured in a flashback way. It's non-linear. Okay? So let's see how it's used. Francis begins the novel as a character with no face and ends with the hope that he will visit a doctor to repair his broken image. His shattered form at the beginning of the book is explained through the variety of flashbacks offered by Cormier, which slowly allows the reader to imagine the trauma of the war. This works in combination with italics throughout that offer a first-person perspective, allowing the reader to not only empathize with Francis, but to understand his thoughts and feelings. Okay, so we've got first to talk about narrative. So we've got flashbacks in there. We've talked about Cormier's intentions. We've talked about the use of italics, and we've referenced several quotations, okay? Same here. Using the verb allure in reference to Larry's influence over the girls in the rec centre solidifies Cormier's aim to make Larry unnerving and predatory from the beginning. This gives connotations of fishing, as if Larry is trying to catch these girls. We discover that Larry is far more dangerous due to Cormier's non-linear narrative, which helps understand Francis' reasons for wanting him dead. I am constantly focused on Cormier's intentions, and I'm embedding my quotations to make it sound sophisticated. And finally, the constant white colour imagery associated with Nicole adds to the innocence of her character. Cormier's intentions were clearly to paint the picture of an innocent saint that is slowly shattered by the predatory Larry. This is horrifically demonstrated with the torn blouse after her rape, intimating that the end of her childish naivety and the beginning of her trauma as she hurts all over. Now, I've embedded quotations there, and I've talked about an incredibly sensitive scene in the book, but I've done it with poise and I've done it with precision, okay? So I'm hoping that that is going to help you structure some of your essays, and my next video is probably going to be on quotations and the use of quotations and how to revise quotations, okay? Thank you very much.